go live.
We're going right now. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to EXSIN Live. We're going to talk about something that I know Phil loves because it's football season, right? And we love teams. And the winning football teams are really good teams. So we're going to talk about 9 steps to build a strong, successful team. How's that sound?
I love it.
So I think we all know, here's what kills me, Phil. I'm a sports radio junkie. If I'm in my car, if I'm listening to a podcast, I'm listening to sports radio. And people go out there going, fire this person, fire that person, do this. There's no leadership. It's really interesting building a team and being on the inside versus watching a team and being on the outside.
Well, because you don't really know what's going on when you're on the outside. I mean, and that can be positive and negative, right? But you just don't know. My wife and I, we've been married 35 years, and we talk about all the time, people make assumptions. We do that with how people look. We do that with how people walk. We do that with every function that everybody has, every quality everybody has. But at the end of the day, we really don't know them. And so I think, there's a big difference when, we were very misunderstood in the military units. People would assume things based on what unit you were in. Or in business, they make assumptions based on what industry you're in. And that's just not the case.
So this is a great leading because the first thing to do to build a strong team is set clear expectations on day one if you're the leader. And I'm going to
go ahead.
I'm going to real quick. Brent Venables, tickled pink when he came in because he is establishing that culture for Oklahoma football. And yeah, they lost this weekend, but everybody is losing their minds. Look, it takes time. But what I know, just like you saw in military units, if you know the leader has established a culture of excellence and set very high standards, you're not going to fail.
Right. And I think, this is the point. This is a hard one to do. It's a hard one to do if you're on the leadership team. It's a hard one for the people that are their teammates. Yep. It's very difficult because what it requires to do, we've done this collectively in our organization. I'm a very much anybody that's been following us for any time know that Dave and I are very different in some ways. Yep. I'm very much more of a free spirit kind of, the human side. Not that Dave doesn't love people, he does. But I naturally gravitate more to the human side of things, yep. Right? Dave naturally gravitates to the people also, but he really digs into the details, the data, the stuff, the why, right? And there's not one right and one wrong, but when you mesh people that have those unique characteristics or styles, it's very hard when you have accountability from day one. And it's important that the leader understands that they got to get to know each one of their people as an individual so they can have appropriate expectations and communicate in a way that's going to be received, and you're going to get the great outcome for the employee and for your customer ultimately at the end of the day. And this last thing, notice I didn't say for you as a leader, because it doesn't matter. What matters is your employees. What matters is your customers. That's what matters. If you're a servant leader, you'll be taken care of when your people are taken care of. That's the bottom line.
Hey, show me your pad of paper and the list you have, because I haven't shared these with you, and you just led right into number 2. I mean, you nailed it.
I don't have.
Are you cheating?
I have abs. I have absolutely. You can't see it because
you actually disappear when you do that. So,
but
the second one you nailed. It's respect your team members as individuals.
Yeah,
it's like you have my script in front of you.
But I don't though. Again, believe us now. See you later, I guess. Or hear me now. Believe me later. But Dave and I most times don't talk about this, and I'll tell you why. Because these are fundamental truths that we believe in.
Yep.
This isn't some script that we have to go off of.
Well, it's more authentic, right?
Well, I mean, listen, and that's part of the reason, Dave, at times we scare the hell out of people, because of the way, we love each other. We're brothers. We do anything for each other, but we're different people. So sometimes you and I have, we have talks. And,
we do.
And it doesn't mean anything's wrong. It just means we need to have a talk. But a lot of people aren't transparent about things. And I think this has a lot to do with it too. You got to be pretty confident in who you are as a person. Because Dave and I, shocker, both pretty big. Phil doesn't use paper. He's 100% verbal.
That's what I was laughing at. Matt's dogging us right now.
Well, no, he's right though. Matt's known me. Matt's known me literally my entire life, so he knows. But you got to be confident as a leader, because there's going to be times when you in the right culture that you're going to get challenged appropriately. I'm not saying insubordinate. I'm saying intellectually challenged, philosophically challenged, and I think that's a sign of a good organization when it's done appropriately, right? When that team member comes and says, "Hey, boss, can I talk to you for a second? I need to visit with you about something," and they have man, that's when an organization's working. That's when they're hitting on all cylinders. That's when things are right. But if you as a leader aren't confident enough to realize that you don't know everything, you don't have all the damn answers, and you're not the guru of everything, right? Then don't, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle. So anyway, yeah, but I got a little bit of a tangent there, but
No,
that's something that's very important to us.
it's not a tangent because it's number 3. And it's
No, it's
engendering
not.
connections within the team and treating them as business partners, right? No matter they're the janitor or the senior vice president, whatever, treat them as business partners, listen to their input, because there's people in the team that see stuff you don't. And if you're not listening to them as a leader, you're going to fail. They're going to tell you we're going to fail, and they're going to do that.
100%. And I want Matt to know, everybody watching, it shows up as Dave Evans posted the reply. Matt, that was me that typed that in this morning when I said true that, when he said Phil doesn't use paper, he's 100% verbal.
I scheduled it, Matt, so it goes under me. Phil scheduled it, goes under Phil.
Yeah, no, it's but to your point, we had an event in Indianapolis last week, and I was with this great room of leaders and entrepreneurs. It was incredible. It was at Butler University. Got to meet Blue, the fourth, or the third, excuse me. No, the fourth. Blue the fourth, the mascot, adorable bulldog. We have the same profile. But anyway, we in this room, all these people are talking about, well, what's the most important thing this? What's the most important thing that? And I was one of the speakers, one of the keynotes, and when this came up, there was 3 of us. So they took the 3 different keynotes for the event and put us on a panel, and we got to just kind of take shotgun, Q&A. And they said, what's the most important thing in an organization? And of course, you know what I'm going to say. I said, it's culture. I mean, it's culture. You can have all the great operating systems. You can have all this great stuff. You have the perfect mission statement. You could have written the perfect mission statement, I should say, because if you have the perfect mission statement, that means you're executing it and you have a great culture. But, if you don't have the right culture, nothing else matters.
Nope.
You're never going to operate at the level that you could. You're never going to have the success you could have. You're never going to be personally fulfilled like you could be. You're never going to get consistently where you wake up every day and you jump out of bed because you're excited to go get started. Culture is everything. And if you don't understand each other, if you don't communicate with each other, you're not going to have a great culture. It's just not going to happen.
The next thing is a space where, Phil, you know this as well as I do, where I'm not as attuned as I should be, still working on it. You are very attuned to this, and it's practicing emotional intelligence.
I call Dave a robot sometimes. No, but it's right, and I want to say this. Matt typed in, "Good process has got to be a close second." Absolutely, Matt. It is a close second. I mean, everything's got to be process driven, but the process falls apart if the culture isn't there. Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Dave. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
Back to that verbal thing.
The big thing, that emotional intelligence, not everybody's motivated the same way. I mean, some people, you get in their face, start screaming at them, they're going to perform better. Others are going to shut down. Some people need a hug, you need to slow down and go, hey, are you okay? And check on them. And that's more and more true than it's ever been probably today. But for high D's drivers, man, it's a tough adjustment because we don't know how to deal with that, right? It's like, seriously, what are you crying? Are you kidding me? Come on, let's go. We got stuff to do.
Dave and I are both D's, if you can't tell, D and I's, but we're both D's, strong D. And we had this happen yesterday, just scheduling. We've both been on the road. We're traveling. We're going places. We got a million things going on. We feel very blessed. There's a lot of wonderful things going on with EXSIN, but Dave sends me a text, and I showed your text to Tanya, and I said, "How would you take that?" She goes, "He's asking a question." And I said, "Well, piss me off." That's what I told her. She starts laughing. She goes, "What did you guys talk?" I go, "Yeah, we're fine." But I mean,
That was good.
but,
Yeah.
but when I first read it, I was like, "What the hell do you mean? Do I want to keep doing it?" so but even guys that, and the reason we share that is it doesn't matter how close you are to somebody.
Yeah.
Communication, brother, is so important. Now, what we're lucky is even if I send you a text or you send me a text or an email and we don't understand it, I promise you the other one's going to call and get clarity because we are not wallflowers when it comes to communicating with each other.
Yeah, and emotional intelligence is interesting, Dave, for the reason you said.
Yeah.
We're all guilty of reading emotion into an email or a text when
Yep. 100%.
there usually isn't an intent. Somebody's just railing stuff out the door trying to get stuff done. They say, "Hey,
Yeah.
blah blah blah," and you read
Yeah.
it, and you're like, "Jerk, horse's backside." Why would you? And we all do that, and I think that's part of the challenge with emotional intelligence is how do you, as a high D, if that's who you are, how do you not send that really short text or email that you don't think anything about, but somebody else may look at it the wrong way, and that's really important. The next one, number 5. Go ahead.
I was just going to share last week in Indy, Mike Hutzel, our good friend Mike, lives in Ohio, great guy, even though he's a Buckeye. We forgive him. We love Mike. But
I never lost the Buckeyes, Phil. Never lost.
I know you didn't, Dave.
Okay,
I actually told him that last week because I remember you tell that story. I said, "Well, just remember Dave's 1-0 against you guys on the field." So, but anyway, he had sent me a text. This is right before we're going on a panel. So, I mean, like getting ready to walk up. So I did the old K and hit send. We get up, and one of the questions was to the panel was what do you guys dislike the most about modern communication? And Mike goes, "I hate it when people reply with the letter K." So I'm down there on the end of the table trying not to laugh because I literally 2 minutes before hit him with a big
should have grabbed
K.
your phone and hit K.
but yeah. So anyway, I digress.
No, you're good. You're good. The next one, number 5, is motivate with positivity. And this kind of goes back to just our core of how we were raised in the military is that you praise in public, you discipline or criticize in private, unless the group needs a butt chewing, and that happens. But,
we've done that before. Yeah.
Don't embarrass people because that's just not going to work, right? And it's not going to work at all.
And I think when you talk about if you do decide to do it publicly, and always do that strategically, right? Dave's seen, I kind of naturally fit into, as crazy as it is, I kind of naturally fit into the bad cop role a lot of times with clients, and because I am more what's the right word? My wife says I'm gregariously to the max, just love to talk and do all these things. But we had a client once, and exactly, I'm not going to mention by name, but the whole group was just struggling. And this is a client that we serve as a fractional C-suite executives with this company. And it was more of the same. And I'm always the guy that's laughing and joking and trying to keep things light. And Dave remembers this. I slammed my size 14 ring hand down on the table and started talking really loud, and everything changed. But I didn't attack anybody. And this is the key thing. If you're going to do things publicly, I've always said, do it as a team, include yourself in the room. And how do you do that? You do it by saying this: we've got to fix this. We've got to get better at this. We've got to, that's how you do it. You don't ever want to single somebody out. I mean, if you have any desire to maintain a good culture, you do not want to do that. And you got to keep even the group corrections to a real minimum. It can't, because then you become the little boy that screams fire in the theater, right? Just don't. You've got to make sure when you're communicating with people that you understand the situation at hand, and most importantly, what's the best path for your organization, not necessarily what you want personally, because we've all been in those situations where we'd like to hand somebody their head, right? because you're just mad or you're frustrated or whatever.
Yep.
You don't have the luxury of doing that. You've got to really keep it non-personal. It's all about the business. It's all about the outcome. It's all about making things better. If you do that strategically, you'll have good outcomes.
And that leads to number 6. You can never over communicate. You got to communicate. You got to let people know what's going on. You got to because people inherently some people are inherently suspicious, may I say, or just nervous about what's going on. Paranoid. Yeah. Whatever. But if you communicate, if you over communicate, which you can't do, your team is going to be a lot happier because they know what's going on and where they fit and what needs to be done. And you don't have those moments where you have to talk to them. We need to do this to get better. Because if you communicated what's going on and where we need to fix things, everybody should know as long as you're communicating with everybody.
And that's why I go back to what we talked about earlier. It's so important that you get to know your team individually and how they receive and how they communicate. So how do they receive words? How do they present words? It's extremely important. I grew up in a world, Dave grew up in a world, whether it was sports when we were younger, then definitely our service in the military and the units we served with, there wasn't time for a lot of damn small talk. You had to, you had to get the point across. You had to do it now because there was real consequence if you didn't. I'm not saying consequence like you don't get a sell or you miss it. No, I'm talking people die if you don't get the right communication across now. And so it's very important that you get to know your team individually. And we're big believers. Dave and I teach this, we coach this, we consult this in everything we do. Walk and talk, right? Get out, go see your people where they are. If you're running a manufacturing company, get out on the floor. If you're in an office setting, first thing you want to do is create an open environment, in our belief, to where there's naturally a feeling of collaboration and communication. But even then, you need to do things. You need to go to the cubicle or you need to go to the workstation and say, hey, you want to go grab a quick cup of coffee? Hey, but you need to have opportunities to talk to these people one-on-one. And honestly, good leaders, the best leaders, they do this consistently day in and day out. They never stop doing this because they understand that you truly are only as good as your team. It doesn't matter how brilliant you think you are as a leader. If you don't do it, if you don't do it consistently, it's not going to work. Yeah, well, the Office.
That's a key point. I'm going to ask whoever's listening is how many of you, as the boss, have just shown up in a division of your company to see how everybody's doing? But more importantly, how many of you, as an employee in your previous life, ever saw the CEO of the company walking around? Yeah. The number is going to be really, really, really low, right?
I always tell this story, Dave, and you've heard this. The first time I ever met, I like to tell people I knew General Schwarzkopf when he was a 3-star general before everybody else knew him, and he was in commander of the Central Command, and I was on a temporary duty assignment at TDY down in Honduras, and we were working in that South Central America theater, and he's in the chow hall on Soto Cano Air Base, and we're sitting there in the chow hall, and he comes in, he's doing a tour, and it was the most inspiring thing. I at that point in my life, it was the most inspiring thing I'd ever seen. He came in, he grabbed a tray, got in line. Now he had a little conversation with the CW4, the Chief Warrant Officer 4, that was over the chow hall, because he didn't like the way they were drying glasses, but because he was afraid he's going to get his troopers sick, as he said very loudly where everybody could hear. But he also quickly put his arm around that CW4 and complimented him. So you're doing a great job. You're doing all these things right. We got to love on our soldiers. We got to love on our troopers. We got to make sure they're healthy. So but this guy was leadership personified. I mean, he was notoriously well known for going out amongst the troops and seeing them. I know you've worked directly with some great general officers, line officers that did the same thing. I had the great fortune of working in the corporate world before I became an entrepreneur with a guy who I think is one of the greatest leaders in business ever. Pat Cooper was just a stud. And what did Pat do that was so good? He focused on his people. He knew if he focused on them, the results would follow. And he did that. He understood that for me, you can be very direct with me, but do not micromanage me, because I will shut down. I mean, I don't do well with that, but he knew how to get everything he could out of me. and so there's great examples all around all of us. They're all around us. Yeah, you just got to be looking for them.
Well, and that goes to number 7, look for ways to reward good work. Every
Yeah.
great leader I have ever worked for in my life, in the military and outside the military, has had that positive impact on his team. You're showing up with just a letter of recognition, showing up and just congratulated somebody for a job well done. Showed up and put their hands in the shop doing the work with his teammates to understand what they were dealing with, and then pat him on the back because he or she couldn't do the work that his
Yeah.
teammates could. I mean,
Yeah.
that is that's a great stance to take with motivating your employees and inspiring them to be better.
The best trainer I ever saw, we were doing some close quarter combat training years ago, and the best instructor I ever had used to be an operator, had to get out of that because he got hurt doing his job. He became a trainer. And what made him so good is he was apathetic to the situations. He understood how difficult it was to do the things that they were training us to do. So he would slow down, and I know you had experiences like this with your your trainers when you were going through aviation school, when you go into pilot training. But just a quick second to your point, where somebody acknowledges that they understand what you do is difficult, changes the mindset of everything. When we stand up and we say, "Well, guys, I don't know. We work with one company who do a lot of business development training with this company." And Dave can attest that every time I talk about it, I say, "Listen, we get it. This is hard. We get it. This is not easy. We get it because we do get it. We get it. It's not easy. But you got to go back to what Matt said, the close second, that process. You got to trust your process. You got to embrace the culture. You got to get yourself ingrained in those things. If you get yourself ingrained in those, and then this is the most important, Dave, you execute with consistency.
Yep.
Good things happen.
So the last 2, Phil, are real simple. We'll combine them. Diversify your team and what you're doing. And the last one is find a team you trust. Now, you can't diversify if you don't trust. I mean, they're kind of hand in hand because you're focused on one area. So, the big thing when it comes to building your team is make sure you have a diverse group of people with differing skill sets that don't think like you do, right?
Yep.
But you trust them even though they think differently. Because if you have a bunch of people around you that are like you, you're going to fail in the same place every time.
Well, and I think, you're right. You've got to trust. You got to trust to diversify, but you also, that trust is going to be accelerated when you do diversify. Because you're trusting that they're going to be able to take this on, and you have to stand back and let them stumble and get bloody noses and do all these things. We've talked about this to nauseum, but constantly developing and training your employees is such a critical component to a healthy organization. And the only way you're going to be able to cross-train, right, diversify, cross-train into these different areas is if you're consistently developing people. If you're not consistently developing people, it doesn't matter. I go back to this all the time. I hate the term, I want my employees to care as much about my business as I do. I hate that. It's not their damn business. Now I understand the intent. I get it. I understand what you're trying to say, but it's incumbent upon you to do the things professional development wise, training wise, to get them to as close as to you can to that desire that you have as the owner or the leader of an organization. People have to know why it's important. If you founded a company, believe me, if you went through the process to found a company as 2 guys that have founded companies, it's not easy. It's extremely hard. So, we already know our why, or we wouldn't have taken on that freaking challenge. We'd have just done other stuff, made good money, and went down the road, had a nice life. But people that are working for, especially if you're working for the founder, right? If the founder is still part of the direct leadership team, that founder's got to really work hard to help create those cross-training, that diversification, and those trust opportunities between teammates. I mean, and you got to realize this too. People are going to disappoint each other. Doesn't mean you have to quit trusting them. It means they're human. It means that people sometimes stumble. It's okay. It's okay. Continue to develop the relationship, continue to get better. Great things will happen.
Well, Phil, that's a great way to close it out. So
Yeah.
this episode of EXSIN Live, I have no words because he's right. We are out of here.